I'm Laurie from Laurie's Country Cottage, and today I'm going to show you how to make Flying Geese the G-Easy way using the Mastering Your Stripology Rulers book and the Stripology Square Mini Ruler. Join me and let's learn how to do this. Today I'm going to be using a pattern directly out of the Mastering Your Stripology Rulers book, as well as the instructions that are found within the book. There's a couple other tools that I really strongly recommend that you use. You need a good, solid 1/4 inch seam. Very important when you're doing Flying Geese. So when I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam that it has to be exactly right, I'm going to use my sewing edge tool and my Sew Standard seam guide to make sure of that. I also do recommend that you get some glow line tape, especially if you're working with any white fabric, because the lines on the ruler do tend to disappear into the white fabric. And the G-Easy stickers are a necessity. I tried to make this once without them and it was a disaster. So my advice, get those stickers. So today what I'm going to do is show you how to make the back home table runner or table topper. I've done a table runner just because I have a longer table at home. And we're going to use the G-Easy method for this. What I like about the patterns in the book, they have several of them that are really lovely, is that they're going to provide you with the measurements that you need and the cut sizes of the fabric. This particular pattern uses two different colors of two different sizes of Flying Geese. And so today what we're going to do is make the back home table topper or table runner from the G-Easy book. This is the runner that I made. And we're going to be making two different sizes of Flying Geese. We need the smaller one here and the larger one here. So we're going to make the smaller one today. The book does provide you with each of their patterns with exactly the sizes that you need. And I use my Stripology XL ruler to cut those because, frankly, I use the Stripology XL for everything. But it's a great tool for that exact reason because it is so versatile. So I cut my background square first. Those are the 8-inch white and my 6.5-inch foreground. This is what's going to make the geese. I cut them first, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my geese square on top of my white square. Now when I do this, I want it to be as close to the center as I can make it, but I have a way to check that using my Stripology XL ruler. So really important that you know some of the markings on this ruler. I know this ruler isn't the main focus of my presentation today, but it's very helpful. So what I'm going to be using right now is this 45-degree angle here. It's actually a 90-degree, but it's to make a 45-degree angle cut. And I'm going to line up the black line right there, the point at the top and the black line there with the top. And then I want to make sure that this cut line right there goes right to the bottom of my square. And that lines up quite nicely. Now, unfortunately, this one right here isn't lining up properly, so I have to do a little nudging. Try that again. And when it's right, the line on the edge will line up right here on this dotted line. Now it doesn't have to be perfect down here at the bottom. So the colored square I'm not going to cut right through the tip, but that's fine because that's going to get cut out later. And all I'm going to do now is just notch my cutter in, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that piece. Now that I've done that, I'm going to take my two pieces to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew a seam along the cut line. Okay, now that I've pressed my pieces open, I have two identical pieces and you can see they look a little strange, right? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to I'm going to place these two pieces one on top of the other, right sides together. What I'm going to make sure matches is the top and the bottom points. Now it's okay if these sides aren't perfect because you are going to trim this later. As the ladies who do the Tucker University classes tell me constantly, it's better to trim down and have too much fabric than to have not enough. So that's exactly what the G-Easy people do as well. Once I have my two pieces like this, I'm going to trim. Again, I'm going to use my XL ruler, mostly because the marking's on it. Once I get to the point where I'm actually trimming my Flying Geese, I'll move to the smaller ruler because this one becomes a little bit unwieldy for that. So I'm going to match up my corners. Again, this one is not quite right. There we go, that looks a little bit better. And again, I'm going to use that 45-degree angle that's here at the top of my tidying cut line. I'm going to tidy that up right there. And that's good. And you're going to see, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but you should be able to see the darker white underneath here, and that's what you're looking for. You need that strip of white down the center. And I'm going to notch my ruler and cut right through the center. And again, I'm going to take those two pieces away to my sewing machine and do a 1/4 inch seam up my cut line. So our next step then is to press this open. Before you do that, there's a very important step. We need the seams to spin, but there's no center seam here. There's no place where all the seams meet. So what we're going to do is take a really good pair of sharp pointed scissors. These are K Buckley. And we're going to trim in the middle between these two seam lines. It doesn't have to be exact, but pretty close. We're going to trim just up to our seam line. Do not cut across the seam. That would be a problem. Once I've trimmed that up to the seam, now I can press it open. And when I do press it open, I'm going to press towards, in this case, the light, or towards your background fabric, whatever that might be. So I'm going to press that one and that one, and it's going to sew up like this, or steam up like this, with this center spun seam. Now you're going to notice when you look at this square, it's not very square. We've been doing a lot of sewing on the bias, and so it's not exactly perfect. But again, we're going to trim it, and that's going to make everything okay. Our next step is to trim the block down so that we get 2 Flying Geese and they're the right size. Now to do this, I'm going to be using this page, or several pages out of the G-Easy book. Remember, this is the Mastering Your Stripology Rulers book. On page 19, it has instructions on how to trim this block so that you have the right size. So the page is really straightforward. It's got instructions for different rulers. So it has instructions for the Stripology Square Mini, which I'm using today. The next page is the Stripology Squared Ruler, the Stripology XL Ruler, and the Stripology Quarters Mini. They all have their uses. I'm using this one because it happened to be the one that I had at home. Make sure you use the right page, just saying. On the page is a little QR code that you can go to for a video from Gudrun, who's the one who originated the videos. I did find it a little bit confusing, so I'm hoping that my explanation is a little clearer. I did make a couple of missteps before I finally figured things out, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our square, and we need to know which size we're doing. So here's our finished size, and here's how big we cut our squares. So I'm using the 8 fabric A square and the 6.5 fabric B square. I'm also going to be using my G-Easy stickers and glow tape. This actually isn't glow tape on here. I found that the glow tape was a little transparent for the camera, so I'm just using a washi tape. This is the size that I want, and I have 3 steps. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. Notice the colors. This package of G-Easy stickers is blue, green, and pink. And if you follow the color coding, you're always going to do them in the right order. I've already prepared my ruler with those. This is the blue, my first step, the green, my second step, and my pink, my final step. So let's get this started. So I've set up my ruler, it's ready to go. I have my G-Easy stickers on the bottom. I've got my glow tape set up along the lines that I'm going to cut with. This is particularly important when you have a white background because I find that the white lines on the ruler tend to disappear. That's where I made some of my mistakes to start with. You're always going to start with your geese, not sure which one it is, your geese on the two sides and your white on the top and bottom. We're going to cut the blue lines first. And it's a little nerve-wracking because you think to yourself, this cannot be right. It is. So I'm going to notch my ruler. I'm going to cut that blue line. And then I'm going to cut the second blue line. Now I do find that that is going to give you a nice cut. The second step, shouldn't have moved that, but I can fix that, is to now line up my right side. Now I want you to see what happens when there's no glow tape on it. It's very hard to see that white line. And so it's a little bit more difficult on this side. I'm lining up my triangle here with the center there. And I'm lining my triangular dotted white line right there on my goose. Now I'm cutting my green. So notching that in, green, and green. Now by doing that, I'm going to get rid of this little tiny extra strip down the middle. You can see I've got this lovely top on both sides. The geese are the right size top to bottom, but they're not the correct size left to right. The top and the bottom are the perfect height, but the sides are a little bit wonky. You can see I've got a lot extra on this side and not much extra on this side. Again, I'm going to use my ruler and I want this part to be the top of my flying goose. And the sides of the triangle should line up. But the most important part you want to line up is the top and the bottom. You want the top line on both sides and the bottom line on both sides to line up perfectly and your triangle to be correct. And now we're going to cut at the pink lines. And we're going to trim that there and there. And that will give us your perfect flying goose. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you take away something from the presentation. Flying geese can be really intimidating, especially for beginner quilters. For me personally, the very first time I did them, they were a disaster. The traditional method of putting the triangles on the side just didn't work for me, and all that bias sewing and not being able to trim them down just didn't work. The G-Easy method using the book and the Stripology Square Mini Ruler really did the trick for me. I'd encourage you to consider using the Stripology XL ruler as well. There'll be a link to a previous Schoolhouse video to show you how to use that if you're interested. And maybe you'll even consider making this beautiful runner. Thanks for joining me.